Okay, I think we're going. There's always this delayed reaction where I'm not sure if we're live, and I've got so many dadgum windows opened up on my screen that I can't find it all. I think we're going though. Yeah. Here it is. Excellent. All right. I got us going now. Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Parents Helping Parents Live. It's first Monday of the month. If you're unfamiliar, we do this the first and the third Monday of every month, where I get the opportunity to come on and visit, typically with a friend of mine, a colleague, somebody in the recovery community, where we can share information that might be useful for parents. So if you're not sure why you're watching this video, or you're not sure how you stumbled in, this is Parents Helping Parents. And in a nutshell, Parents Helping Parents is an Oklahoma-based nonprofit organization founded by parents, primarily run by parents, with the mission of providing education, shared experiences, and resources to families or parents who have a child any age who's struggling with a substance use disorder. So essentially what we do is, if you've got a child, whether they're 15 or 55, who's still struggling with addiction, struggling with substance use disorder and mental health, we want to offer some support. We want to share our stories, share some of the things we've uncovered along the way. We want to connect you with some resources and maybe offer up some education about what may or may not be happening in your situation. You know, as an organization, we don't offer any professional experience or expertise. We've only walked in the shoes of a loved one who has, and our mission is limited to doing those things. So we just don't want anybody to be confused that any of the outreach we offer is a substitute for professional counseling, medical advice, legal advice. All of those things are wonderful. We want you to get those if they're appropriate for your needs. We just don't offer those. We're the people that want to connect you with the ones that do. So hopefully you found yourself in the right spot. If everybody could do me a favor, I'm going to do it while I'm asking you to do it. I'm going to click over to my other screen and I'm going to share the video to my Facebook feed. If you're watching live on Facebook right now, that is an excellent way to increase the number of people that can see this video, right? Even if you only have a couple hundred friends on your news feed, I guarantee you somebody in that group has a loved one or a family member who's struggling with addiction, struggling with mental health, and you never know what the one catalyst is going to be in their life that creates change, and it could be you sharing this video. So reach over, click that share button. We would appreciate it. Click those likes and all that good stuff. If you're watching later on Facebook, you can still share the video. If you're watching on YouTube, you can copy paste the link, share to Facebook as well, all of those good things. You know, we want these live streams to be as interactive as possible. So there's a couple of different ways that you can interact with me and Todd tonight as we're having our talks and throwing out some good stuff. You can do that in the comment section on the Facebook page on the video that you're watching. Totally great. I'm looking at that over here on the side of my screen, so I'll be monitoring that. If you want to ask a question or you want to make a comment, that's a good spot to do it. But remember, that's the internet. It's attached to your name, and it's going to be on there from now until the end of days. So if you're concerned about your privacy, or if you're concerned about your anonymity, don't post anything in that comment section, because it's public and people will be able to see that. If you're concerned about those things, but you still have questions, you still want to reach out and try to connect with us tonight, in the title of the video, there is a text line. If you will text that number, your questions, your comments, that's anonymous. Your name will not be attached to that. That text line goes directly to my Google Voice text. We read the comments, we answer the questions, and then we delete them at the end of the night. And they will disappear forever, and no one will ever know that you came across our path if that's what you want. So, you know, we understand a lot of us have been in places where we've needed help at different points in our life. And early in that process, it's hard to admit that. It's hard to be public with your struggle. For some people that are never public with their struggle, it's only a private thing for them and their family. And we totally understand that. And we want to honor and respect that if that's your choice. So those are the two options to interact this evening. You know, if you want to know more about Parents Helping Parents, there's a couple different places I can direct your attention. One of those is to our website, www.parentshelpingparents.info. Great place to connect, to see that everything we're up to catch how many different Zoom meetings we've got going on and how many different live streams we've got going on throughout the week, and to get information about our upcoming fundraiser. The other thing you can do is follow us on Facebook at Parents Helping Parents Inc. Another great way to stay connected with us there, to message us anytime for resources or for help. That's not a hotline invitation, just so people aren't confused. If you message us at 3 a.m, we'll get back to you the next day, but not at 3:05 in the morning, right? We don't constantly monitor our Facebook feed like that. I think that's all I've got. With that being said, we're really glad you joined us tonight. Got a good buddy of mine, Todd Palmer, who is the Todd, how would you describe it? Owner, executive director, president, head honcho?
Yeah, sounds good. Right. Yeah, all the above, jack of all trades. Yeah, owners, CEO. Yeah, it's Inward Bound Health Solutions. Yeah, my company started over 10 years ago. Here, we're located here in Midtown, Oklahoma City. We do outpatient behavioral health. Yeah, I started off working with kids a long time ago, been 25 years in counseling, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, licensed addiction counselor. We do at Inward Bound here, we do addictions, we do mental health, and we do all ages and stages. And a lot of people that come through our door are just in various states and stages of needing recovery. And so we're there to help in any way we can. And so yeah, we're right here and centrally located and easy to get to.
Man, really glad you're with us, Todd. For people who have never had the privilege of meeting Todd, not only is he one of the salt of the earth people, but he is incredibly gifted at his trade. And I know that him and his entire staff there at Inward Bound just does phenomenal work. So if you're looking for a place locally here in Oklahoma City to connect, Todd would be a good spot. So Todd, thanks for joining us, man. I know when we were talking about this, we were kind of throwing around some ideas and wanted to get into having some discussion on boundaries and, what boundaries maybe need to look like for families, especially families who have experienced some wounds, some woundedness, and some addiction related issues. So brother, let's start. I also want to preemptively say that this is my favorite type of live stream because Todd and I basically had like 2 minutes of conversation and we're like, hey, we've been doing this a long time, let's fire it off. And that's just the way it goes. So I love it. But man, let's start, Todd, with maybe just talking about what are some of the maybe kind of primary ways you see addiction impact family structure and do damage to, things like boundaries and create wounds within the family.
Oh yeah. I've seen it. I see lots of misconceptions. I see where it comes. Certainly in the heat of it all, where the damage is being done, and they always think that, man, it's we're going to get past this. It's just going to be over. This is going to be the last time. Last time it's going to happen. I won't do it again. It's the last event, the last party, the last drink, the last pill, and the last DUI, and all that. It's just such a beast. It's nobody can ever guess just exactly how overwhelming this is. I have had in my practice people that are NFL size individuals, WWE size individuals, break down. I just turned into just small, just to nothing because of addiction, because it doesn't matter how big you are, how massive and how strong you are. It doesn't matter. It is an all-purpose, across the board, no demographic can possibly escape it, destroyer. It doesn't matter who you are, what size you are. You cannot move this obstacle of addiction by sheer strength or willpower alone. And I've just seen it with my own eyes. People I would not have thought about, strong people, stereotype people in the community. And it doesn't matter what stereotype you want to put it in, you can guarantee that addiction is present there, and it will ruin you, period. And there's nothing you can do about it but just face it head on and go, you're it. I cannot defeat you without help, period.
why has talk a minute about what maybe has changed, if anything, about addiction over the last like couple of years with the pandemic. Have you guys seen an increase in the amount of calls you get related to substance abuse treatment? Has it seemed to remain constant?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think definitely the increase was up just with just a variety of substances, and including even just behavioral addictions. Behavioral addictions even become a big thing. It just the fact of being obsessed or addicted to just things that just overwhelm and consume you to the point where addiction is defined as something that just becomes so consuming and so much of an obsession that you think about it, you yearn for it, you cannot function without it, and the rest of your life and the rest of other things just are become secondary. And that could be games and social media and electronic screens and other stuff that could come out of that. And because I've even seen even video games and stuff during the pandemic become so self-consuming and so self-absorbing in individuals that had lost their jobs and so forth, where that become the escape, the drug, so to speak, where then family and friends got neglected, and where everything became, all their needs were met by that. Substance addiction, pills and drugs are still 100% still a huge thing, and still became hugely on the rise during the pandemic. And in inpatient facilities, rehab facilities, where we were all just struck with what to do, and how to help these people, with where they could take them in, and then us on the outpatient world, how we could help fill the gap basically, and do what we could do when even inpatient facilities were cut off for that short period of time, where the world was on hold basically. But it was a mess.
What is it about addiction issues, do you think, that makes it so challenging for families? Like maybe more so than having somebody in the family who, I'm minimizing it now in my own head. Is it like, the sentence was gonna say, like, as opposed to somebody who just struggles with depression or just struggles with anxiety, like those aren't big deals. And I absolutely don't mean to be disparaging with that, but it seems like having a family member with addiction is a little bit set apart and different from maybe having a family member who just struggles with an emotional health issue. What makes it so different? What makes it so challenging for families?
Well, because you've got multifaceted issues going on here, because you almost always have, well, you have the addict itself, in the system, and then what's usually not known is you got someone over here, the non-addict person here, who's been living the life, and who's been coping and managing and all that dysfunction in the function of the relationship, and maybe for months, years, or decades, or however long it's been. The longer it's been, the more dysfunction there is in that relationship. And especially if it's a family unit with kids and stuff involved, you're talking about an entire system here that has learned around one particular addict, how to function in a dysfunctional environment, basically. And that's not healthy. So that means the entire system is unhealthy. So everything in there becomes then unhealthy. And so they don't even realize that they're just coping. It's just part of their life, is coping with this person, because this person, the addict, is the one with the problem. But when you start dealing with the problem and pulling it apart, and the addict starts getting healthy, that's when you start realizing that how much everybody has a problem, basically, because especially as the addict starts healing and getting better, you still really have these people that are hurt from past hurts that you haven't dealt with yet, because they've got their own trauma that they've got to deal with. Because we can't just focus on the addict, you got to focus on the entire system, all the kids and the people in the home, and the person that's there. We can't ignore their problem. because they've had to live with it. And now they've got to figure out how to live a whole new life with this person. And that's a whole set of other parameters that I find both rewarding and challenging to see unfold and be eye-opening at once too in front of people. What I've explained, especially out of rehab to somebody, and I think the best metaphor that I've used many times out of rehab to somebody that's especially with alcoholism, that's sober and trying to dealing with family members, is that being sober is like an exposed nerve. If you've ever had a root canal, if you've ever had a tooth pulled, if you ever had your sensitive teeth, where you breathe in, and you just, every single breath, every single intake of air is just when you've ever had that exposed nerve, everything touches it is super sensitive and lights you up. That is an addict, a clean person, the sober, experiencing all of the emotions with unfiltered for the first time ever. And it's so difficult for them and overwhelming for them to realize this is what real anger feels like. This is what real frustration feels like without over medicating it, without pouring alcohol on it, without putting an opiate and a pain medicine on it, without dulling it, without dulling the senses. That root canal, that exposed nerve, is exactly what they have to learn to live life dealing, where the rest of us and their family members have certainly had to deal with life stress. They've had to they now have to figure out how to deal with that.
But at what point does that get better for an addict in sobriety, or at what point does that begin to change so that there's not as much heat and not as much edge built into the tumultuous relationships that have been created by that addiction?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. That's a great question. It's a slow process. I mean, I love to try to build on as much positive reinforcement as I can. Is every little win, every little, every little positive that they get, all the positive stuff, the being awake and sober for the first kid's ball game, and for the first kid's birthday party, and all that stuff. I mean, I've heard story after story about, the dads passed out there, after work, after a case of beer or a fifth of vodka, and the kids are just so used to it that they're just laying on him, crawling all over him, and they're just used to just walking over him throughout the day, throughout the evening, until they go to bed at night. And I mean, and that's it. And then the sober, and then when he gets sober, and then it's like he's tucking him in bed, and then celebrating with him in our sessions, going how great that felt, and both how weird and how wonderful. It's all, it feels to be present and celebrate it at the same time, because it is a combination of weird feelings, but it's great feelings. So I try to get as much positive reinforcement as there is in there, along with dealing with the awkward and the bad stuff that we also deal with in life, that drives them into the temptation of, man, I need a drink, I can't handle it. It's a fight, or how to deal with it. Because even with the sober person, the sober partner, I got a lot of work to do with them, because a lot of time you got to deal with the sober person. I work with them. It's like, I even tell them ahead of time, you're going to be tempted to self-sabotage, because I let them know ahead of time what they're going to be tempted to think about, and how ashamed they're going to be of thinking about it. They're going to miss their drunk husband. They're going to miss their doped out husband, because their doped out husband was somebody they could predict, somebody they knew what to expect. And that's the thing about a healthy lifestyle, when you've been so used to decades long of unhealthy lifestyle, is you don't know what to expect. And that's what gets people messed up. That's what gets people messed up.
Yeah, that's really good. There's a quote that I love. I don't even know where I read it or who said it. It's just always stuck with me, that oftentimes people stay stuck in their addiction because addiction's painful, but it's predictable.
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so like it's almost like we prefer painful predictability to less pain chaos.
Oh, oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
You also touched on it too, you know, talking about the exposed nerve of somebody that's in sobriety and what life is like trying to manage that. But the family has another task, which is learning how to manage the person that has the exposed nerve and the chaos that person tends to bring. What do families need to be kind of focused on? What do families need to be thinking about as they have a loved one that steps into recovery?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Yeah, they learning, redefining their self-care, because they're going from basically self-preservation for all these years, and now we need to redefine it still into, into self, just basic self-care. um that's different from self-preservation, because self-preservation, all in the while could be deception, and let's lie to him, and let's keep it from him and protect him and all that stuff, so what he doesn't know won't hurt him, and so, all that kind of stuff. And we don't want lies and deception and stuff. We want, because we want the truth. We want everybody to know what's going on. We need straight up, we want straight up, eyes wide open boundaries. We want, I'm not going to get used, I'm not going to get pushed. I know that you're not feeling well into this. Recognize that this isn't an easy journey, but I'm not going to be anybody's punching bag. We want exit strategies for timeouts, for when people are, have had enough, and they just need to walk out and take a breather. And we want self-care. We want just real strategies that's possible, and they're not always, cookie cutter. I mean, there are some basic, grab bag cookie cutter type strategies that, like the timeouts, like I like to recommend to everybody, but it's still, what works for you and every family is kind of unique. What are you able to do, and what are you capable of doing? I want it to kind of still, it's all going to feel new and weird and different when you start to do it. But it needs to be something that you can think in the stressful moment to do, so that you can execute it, after we've made this plan to do, basically.
Yeah, how important is it for family members to seek their own services related to how to manage the situation and how to heal?
Oh yeah, yeah. Another good question. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the whole family has to heal. Yeah, I think, everybody needs to definitely get their own services, and recognize their own trauma and their own pain, out of this, because brushing it under the rug isn't going to help anything. It's one thing to maybe, just, prioritize, something for a while temporarily, but recognize that, look, we're going to get this taken care of. We're certainly we're going to take care of, maybe you first, maybe because it's money and insurance or something else, but then, we'll integrate me in family therapy. We'll do whatever it takes, for me to read up and follow, and I'll read the brochures and the booklets and stuff, and I'll do it. But definitely the whole family needs to be on a healing journey, and needs to understand the language and the concepts, and remove the blinders, and what trauma really did happen, through that previous journey, because it's all this past hurts. We tend to default to living in the past, and that's just our natural nature. We something happened in the past, and it's like it just hangs with you, and if you can't find a way to let it go, and find a way for kids to process it, and kids to deal with it, so they can vent and have their own ways of dealing with it, and then the adults in their lives find the way to deal with it, then it's just going to be something that you're just kicking it down the road, and it's going to get ugly later on.
Yeah, you used a really fun phrase that people poke me at all the time. in my own work. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I get asked a question routinely, like, how do I let go of my trauma? How do I get over my trauma? What's kind of your, I know that's a whole other probably live stream, right? But kind of in a nutshell, how do you typically respond to that question?
Well, yeah, good. That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of working parts in there. I mean, you're never going to forget what happened to you. I mean, there's a lot of colloquialisms. There's a lot of sayings. There's a lot of our society has all kinds of favorite sayings that you go to your friend and you go vent to, and you go to your neighbor and you go to your brother and you go vent to, and they have all kinds of things, just get over it, it's in the past, how it
Let go
can't
and let
bother you
God.
anymore.
That's a favorite
Yeah,
one for me.
yeah, give it to God, and just pray about it, and do all those things, and none of it comes with directions.
Yeah.
None of it comes with purpose. None of it comes with real healing. And part of the healing component of that is just acceptance. You can't change the past, but you can accept what happened to you. You have to be able to accept that the past had happened and it's unchangeable, so that you can move forward, and then move forward past to the healing, because there's nothing you can do. You can't get in a time machine and change the past. No matter what you do, you can't forget it. No matter what you do, you can't drink enough to forget it, and you can't do enough to forget it. You can't do enough right things to make it right. You can't do enough wrong things. You can't. There's nothing. There's no changes you can do in your life to discount what happened in the past. Not 5 years ago, not 5 minutes ago, or 5 seconds ago. It's done, over with. You have to deal with and accept what happened in the past, and then move forward with that, because tomorrow is the important thing. What you're doing tomorrow is what matters. You talk to any child. You look at if you have kids, look at them. If you or go to the playground. If you don't have kids, and go to a park and watch kids and how they interact. And when you talk about Future X, it's watch them. It's about they may get upset about something that happened right then, but it's a flash in the pan for them. You ask a 7-year-old what they were mad at 5 minutes ago, and they don't even remember what they were mad at 5 minutes ago, because they could be mad at you and even say, I hate your guts, and go storm off, and then come back and they're drawing pictures of you and them playing games and stuff like that, sitting in your lap and wanting to hug and stuff. And because it's gone, it's done. They're in the here and now, and they're thinking about, hey, well, you go play ball with me. And you may even still be mad at what happened because they broke something of yours. But the kids can teach us a lot about, hey, the past is not near as important as right here, right now, and what the future brings. That's why I love kids so much, is they can teach us a lot about coping when it comes to that.
What are some ways that adults can be a little bit more childlike in that approach to being more focused on the present and solution than staying stuck maybe in shame and in self-pity that's come with some of our trauma?
Yeah. It's part of that is just in the acknowledgement of it. I find that just not running away from it. It's the more you run away from it, the more it just creates the shame. I mean, you sometimes you just have to which is part of the professional help. You just have to be able to go to the professional help to where you can kind of learn kind of to desensitize yourself, because that's even some of one of the trauma therapies is trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy, which is one of the concepts behind it is being able to be basically desensitized to your past trauma, basically. And I used to have a real hard time with that. I didn't want to. Why do I want to bring up this constantly? Why do I want to bring up someone's rape constantly back and forth to them, and bring up and have them relive this moment. Well, when you get to thinking about when you get to thinking about that, what we do desensitization in our life almost spontaneously, multiple times in our lifetime. We systematic desensitization is something that almost comes natural to us, that we've learned ourselves without ever having to go to therapy about it. If we've either learned to eat or drink something that we didn't like a green vegetable or something from our childhood. We didn't like broccoli when we was in the 7th grade, and then finally we found a way to like broccoli. Was that because taste buds changed? Taste buds do change. But maybe it was because that your family, liked broccoli, and you finally got around to like broccoli. I used to not like, I only liked, my stepdad loved oysters, and I tried oysters and couldn't stand them. He kept eating them until the point where every time we would go have these can of smoked oysters out of a can with cheese and crackers, and they were the nastiest smelling things in the face of the planet. And after about the 3rd time, whenever he would get them out, which wasn't all that often, but he got them out and I'd try them. It got to the point where, okay, just because when I was a kid I wanted to be there and have this moment with him, I got to the point where I loved him, to where I just, okay, let me have another one. Let me have another one. Let me have another one. And then for Pete's sake, smoking, and beer, for God's sakes, nobody liked the taste of beer the first time you ever had that. And nobody liked to stick a burning, rolled up, sagebrush in your mouth and smoke a cigarette. And it was a wonderful experience of your life, to do the first time you ever smoked it, but you did it anyways because all your buddies were doing it. So systematic desensitization is something we're all used to, and we're all used to doing it. We all have it in our lives, and that's actually a very big component of trying to of getting past the trauma.
Yeah. I want to circle back around because you said 2 things a ways ago, but I made notes about them because I thought they were worth following up on. You referred to families a couple of different times this evening as systems. Can you, for the people who maybe aren't familiar with that or haven't heard that, can you maybe kind of give a brief work through of what that means when we call families systems?
Sure. Yeah. Family, like any type of unit, it can be described as it's just a type of working system. So it has a hierarchy to it. It basically in its own kind of working methodology to it. So and it's like a work system, basically. A family system in itself isn't too much different in composition to a corporate structure, basically, where there are people in charge and there are people that are doing the work, and there are different levels there, and in a family with different expectations. And a family system is kind of composed of kind of the same thing. You do have mom and dad and kids, and certainly even in some homes you have larger family systems, because you might have multi-generational family systems, because you could have grandma and grandpa living with you or other extra family members. So there could be a considerably larger family system all living in the same roof, depending on what culture that you're from or a living situation that you're in. And so as a family system, you are your own little living bubble right there, and it has its own type of, its own enclosed environment. I have to remind my therapist all the time, and even remind myself, that whenever I'm talking to people, we've got to constantly remember and try to get out of people what their norm is, because what normal is to you may not really be the same thing that I consider normal, or even the normal that our society considers normal. So when we're talking to somebody about something, such as their drinking habits, matter of fact, perfect example is, somebody used to having a nightcap every single night, the glass of wine every single night. It's pretty normal to have fairly normal for the average American to have, a glass of wine every night. I learned that I had to start inquire until, okay, you're right. A lot of people do have a glass of wine at night, but tell me, how big is your glass? Oh, and then so the answer I would get is, well, you're right, exactly. Yeah, a Stein, exactly. It's the German Stein that I come home from the medieval fair this weekend. Is what I have. Hopefully that's okay. It's like, yeah, right. And various versions of that was coming out, basically, where it's like, a serving at the restaurant's only about 4 ounces, I believe.
Yeah. How do you balance that reality, Todd, of understanding that on one hand, every family system is going to have a different balancing act and a different normal? How do you check that against your normal still has to be healthy and not unhealthy, and fight against families who are like, well, that's just normal in our system?
Yeah. Well, we certainly want to look at that. I mean, there could be a rationale for some version of their normal is maybe within quasi normal, because normal's not really a dot on a line. Really, normal is a range, kind of, when it comes to normal healthy, when it comes to statistical normal. So when it comes to statistical normal, when everybody's talking about that, it's certainly not going to be a hard and fast boom, just one dot. Yeah, you've certainly got a range there, and I like to explain that. We've got a range there, because people will love to point that out to you. Oh, well, I can drink, and binge drink all weekend long and do XYZ, or I can do XYZ and then not drink anything for the next 4 or 5 months. Okay. Yeah. And so there's always somebody that can be an outlier. So for those of you that like numbers and statistics, which it's not me, but I do remember enough of it, that basically is always going to be someone that's an outlier. All that means is that every time someone says that here, all the normal people are within this range and this range. And then when you say, oh, but I have my Aunt Sue can do such and such, or my Uncle Bob can do such and such, all that means is that they're just happen to float around here in the outliers. And that's all it means, is that, oh, because they can do this, or because they have this trait or that, they're just an anomaly. Okay. Yeah. So they're just an anomaly. Great. Fine. That we all know anomalies, but that doesn't mean that that's where we want to be or can be, because some people are just that way. Some people can hold their alcohol and possibly drink half a liter of vodka and don't have an alcohol problem whatsoever, and binge drink that once every 6 months, not get sick, not have a problem, not have and can go drive right after that and not even show a blood alcohol level of any significance. They're an anomaly. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I always like to think of it in terms of measuring what your family is experiencing with the outcome that it's getting your family. Is it having negative outcomes on any area of life? And if it is, you should probably really consider how healthy of a behavior it might be. Right.
Yeah, another good example of kind of where you're going with that is all your stories that you talk about and that you laugh about when you have family get-togethers, that we're all laughing about, is, yeah, when I got arrested, or yep, when that cop took me down, and the last time that I outrun the popo, or boy, then when I was in the county. When all the stories start with that, and that's what the entire family is laughing about, and the entire family culture is laughing about that, and that's what the entire family, it's the only thing they have to basically identify with. Then you've got a generational problem, basically, and there's going to be a real problem. Because of that generation, there's going to be a real problem whenever you're trying to sober up and get away from that. You're going to have a real tough time You know, if you have a real tough time getting away from that, being the only person sober, and non-addicted, getting out of that and having and not having that story, because it's hard. I'm not going to lie to anybody, and not going to sugarcoat it. Whenever I've worked with those families before, when they're at a loss during Christmas time and during Thanksgiving time and a family time, with those situations where that's just all the family has. You know, that's their bonding. You know, and nobody thinks there's anything wrong with it because it's just that entrenched in there. And then you got somebody that finally is so sick of it that they're just, I got to get help. I can't live my life like this anymore. I'm tired of seeing people go off to prison or die, you know, and then one person finally decides to get healthy. And then you got people that are rooting for them up to a point until the next party comes along and they're going, here, man, it's okay. It's just Thanksgiving. Here, go ahead and have, you know. No, man, no. That's it, not okay. It's not okay. And then trying to going back to one of your original, you know, points earlier about then I got to reinforce boundaries, and I got to reinforce lots of healthy stuff, and I got to, you know, and I'm not their favorite person at that time. I can tell you that during the holidays and during the Super Bowl and those things, they don't like really coming to see me because they know what I'm going to say. You know, because it's for the just quickly, I'll tell you quick, my rules are just quick in, quick out, have exit plans, engage and disengage in those unhealthy environments, you know, because we know we need family, but know your limits.
Yeah. Man, that's good stuff, Todd. Hey, I always kind of let people wrap up with just asking them, you know, in the event, and hopefully this is the case every time we do one of these, in the event that a family is watching or sees this video and they're in a really dark place with one of their family members, or in the event that somebody who's actually struggling with substance use comes across this video, if you had 60-90 seconds just to deliver like a singular message of hope to that person, to that family, what would that be?
Man, it's the hope is out there. It's the way to go. It is tough. It's a tough road. There is nothing easy about it, but it's the only way. It's the only way to live. I have this year alone has seen so many people already die, and don't want it to be you. Don't want it to be don't need to put any more people in the ground. Yeah. We're just so done with that. We're so done with that. It is time to lift people up and just start doing everything we can do to fight this battle, and do everything you can do to save your loved one, and just, you know, whatever you can possibly do, because it's a battle and it's a war, and they're having a war within themselves. And everything you can do, they already feel shame for themselves. So everything you can do to build them up, when no matter how angry you are, whatever it is, let them know how much you love them, how much you're behind them, because their thoughts in their head are going, I'm nothing, I'm not worth anything. But having one voice constantly telling them the exact opposite of what their own self is telling them every time they look in the mirror is part of the battle won right there. Just don't give up on them. Don't give up on them. We don't need another person in the ground. We're done with that.
Yeah, man, it's good. Hey, Todd, man, that 45 minutes flies by.
Yeah, it does, man. It's quick.
It feels like 5.
Right, man.
Hey,
right.
Todd, thank you, man, for your time tonight. We were just talking about how hard Mondays can be sometimes, and at the end of the day, you still were willing to come on and do this. So, man, I appreciate it. Thank you for everything you do out in the community. You're a huge asset.
You too, man. Thanks a lot, Derek. Sure do appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, everybody that joined us, thank you. You could be doing lots of different things on a Monday night, but you chose to spend with us, so we really appreciate it. Enjoy the beautiful spring weather that we're finally having, and we'll catch everybody in 2 weeks.